So now we've completed the lesson, we need to add some assessment, and that sits here in what have you learned. So the drop down menu there, and then we're going to put a link to some assessment material. And that assessment material we're keeping in a project folder. Open a new tab, open up the project folder. So this is a Google Drive folder that we've been using to keep all the resources for practical handbook and theory handbook. So we're working on the theory handbook, let's click on that. And we can see all the units in there. Unit 201 is what we're working on. And you can see that that has folders for each lesson. So let's add a new folder. I'm going to call it Unit 201, Lesson 2.3. Create it. So now we need some content. We've got a template quiz here. Let's right click, make a copy. And add that quiz to our new folder. Go into the folder and we can start editing. So it's just a copy of an old quiz, and I'm going to rename it. So if I go back to my lesson, technical drawings used in the construction industry, let's call that quiz technical drawings. And rename the file. Technical drawings quiz. Okay, so the basic format for this is that they get the quiz, they need to put the name in, and then they can answer a series of questions. And I'm guessing that most of you will be fairly familiar with using Google Forms to create quizzes. So if you already know how to do this, skip this section and move on to how we link it back to the website. I'm guessing from that you either haven't done this before or you'd like a quick recap. So how to make a quiz. We've got two options here. We can either just, because I've got an existing template, you can either just reword the questions that are here. You can just change them, or you can delete these questions and start again. So for the sake of clarity, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to get rid of these questions and make a couple of sample questions just to go through the process. So this section, we're going to call it technical drawings. So understanding and using technical drawings. And I'm going to put a description there in a minute, but we'll come back to that. So first thing I'm going to do is create a multiple choice question. So I've just completed the lesson, so I've got a lot of stuff fresh in my mind that I've just sort of put into the activity. So I could probably just remember and just type up some questions and give them some options. But one thing that's also worth doing and remembering is that eventually this is preparing them for the EPA, so it's good to have a look at what some past papers and just check the sort of questions that they might be faced with. So I was having a look at this earlier, and on the endpoint assessment set by City and Guilds, there's a question that I'm going to use and adapt a little bit. So it's what type of drawing could provide the information required to set out some internal stud work. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it in here and adapt it a little bit. So it's a little bit wordy, but I'm going to leave it as City and Guilds have presented it, because our students have to get used to the sort of phraseology that they're going to have to understand and work through when they're doing the endpoint assessment, the theory endpoint assessment. And it's better to flag up that they're struggling to understand the questions here than when they're on their own in the room trying to do their endpoint assessment. So I'm going to leave it wordy. I'm not going to try and simplify that at all, but I'm going to change it a little bit. So what type of working drawing would provide the information required to assemble kitchen unit? So I'm happy that we've covered that subject well enough for them to be able to answer the question, and I'll go back to the City and Guilds past paper. I can just copy those questions back over, reformat it, just get rid of the A's, B's and C's. I'm going to make it required. I'm going to shuffle the option order. I'm going to add some points, call that 1 point, and watch the answer. So what type of blah, blah, blah. So it's going to be an assembly drawing. And that's done. So that multi-choice type of question typically is pretty good at answering, assessing this sort of level of learning. Can the learner name the types of working drawing, maybe identifying common symbols? Well, that's not in that question, but it's that sort of level of learning, the very basic level that our level 2 learners need to achieve. I'm going to see if I can work out another question that's going to stretch them a bit, see if I can get some of my learners to answer questions at a slightly higher level. So this idea of understanding and applying what they've learned. So for that, I'm going to go back into my quiz. I'm going to add another question, and I'm going to make that a short answer. So how can we do this? So what about the plumber has told you that the stud wall you are installing is in the wrong place. How could you use the floor plan drawing to resolve this issue? Oops. So giving our learners a little bit more scope for explaining their understanding of the drawings. You could get a really easy answer for that. Yeah, we've just shown the drawing, but hopefully some students would be able to take it a little bit further than that and explain how they can avoid conflict and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to give them 3 potential points in that one. Make it required, and that's that one done as well. So just a word of caution. Okay, so obviously the self-marking questions, you could put 10 of those in, give them a point each, and you don't have to. You don't really have to do anything on it. You can just check your learners and see how well they're doing. With this, obviously, you need to assign points to it. So be a little bit wary of putting these in. Obviously, that adds work, and as we are pretty tight for staff, that might be something you want to do with a bit of caution. So just to allow for that, what I'm going to do here in the description is I'm going to add a little bit of a caveat. So I'm going to say that written answers will not be marked but you may ask your tutor for feedback. So just means that it's hopefully saving excess work for the teachers, but also what that can do is it highlights the students that want to know a bit more, and you're probably prepared to spend a bit more time with them. So that's the point of that. So with these quizzes, as I've been going through, some of them I've made all completely automatic, self-marking. Some I've done a combination like this, and some I've done all written answers. So I usually try and make 10 points in total for each of these. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be, that's just a figure that I sort of got in my head, and I like things consistent. So I'm going to just pause the video. Yeah, just pause myself a bit too quickly. I'm going to pause the video, add a few more questions, and then come back to show you how to track this and link it to the site. So I've got a series of questions, got 10 points worth there. So it's always worth just checking that everything works properly. So I'm going to preview it. Put my hands. I'm going to call myself test so I don't get myself mixed up with the students. So describe the benefit. You don't have to answer these. But it's always worth the multi-choice ones checking that you got your answers right. So what's that? Set of elevations. Type of drawing could be used to find out which way to your door. That'd be a floor plan. Type of drawing, blah blah blah. Assembly drawing. Describe orthographic projection. Blah blah. Okay, so I submit that. View my score. So now we're seeing it as the learner would see it. So it's saying these are wrong, and our learners might get a bit upset if they put a good answer and it's saying it's wrong. That's why I put that description in earlier, and we could prime them for this as well. Everything else seems to be all right. So multi-choices are clicking is correct, so I'm happy with that. So I'll go back, and I'm going to set up some tracking. So I click on responses and create a spreadsheet, and that will automatically be in the folder that we just created for this session. And there's my test score. So we can use this to track our students. Go back to this. The next thing I need to do is to send it. So I click on send, and I want an embed code. You can shorten it, doesn't matter, and copy it. So now I go back to my assessment module here. So complete this. Drawing quiz. Highlight it and add that link. Okay, so that's all good. I'm going to publish that. View it and make sure everything works.